Living in the Mediterranean Sea means sailing through history. The Etruscans, the Sards, the Pelagians, the Cyclopeans are only some of the ancient peoples of the sea who colonized the Mediterranean coasts toward the first millennium BC. But who was there before them? Once upon a time, a population of navigators and builders of Cyclopean walls left behind some incredible remains. They called this population the Pelagians. But who were these people and where did they come from? Along the Mediterranean coast, you can still come upon their remains, for example, in Norba, in the Lazio region. We're in front of Porta Maggiore in Norba. In Calabria, on the Silla mountain, there's the smell of Pelagians here. In the Salento, these walls have a megalithic structure. And then along the Corinth Canal to Athens. I'm in Athens beneath the Acropolis. And in Mycena, at last I'm here in Mycena, to Troy, on the search of the seafarers' roots and of the origins of the Pelagians. On our journey of the Mediterranean, we're going to discover the remains of an ancient and almost unknown past. So all we have to do is sail on. And in order to set sail, I'm on board the Adriatica, and we're leaving for our vacation, yes, but also searching for those mysteries.
Can I cast off?
Captain, shall we cast off?
Ready to hoist sail.
The crew is made up of Guido di Palermo, a sailing lover who in real life deals in the world of finance.
Then of course there's our Stefano. He's an artist.
Laura is a housewife and mother of 2 beautiful children.
Filippo's an expert in logistics.
And then besides Zoe, our daughter, there's also my friend Lorella, a set designer. We're certainly a crew with a mission, to recount the endeavor of the Argonauts, the mythic forerunners of the peoples of the sea, of which the Tyrrhenians were part of, thus meaning the Etruscans.
Loosen it up.
Yes, indeed, it's as white as snow. As we begin this adventure, we leave from Portoferraio, which is a place where I've already been to, and a place where I've learned many things. Maybe this is the place the Argonauts were looking for, because this was Italy, the place where fires melted iron. It was the Island of Iron, the Island of Metal. What if these metals were from the real Golden Fleece?
We're leaving the harbor of Portoferraio. Look at this beauty. Oh, let me soak up this view and these historic palaces and their importance of the island, where so much happened, also in more recent times, in comparison to those of the Argonauts. And Elba is not only the place where the mythical Argonauts landed in search of metals, and it wasn't just about the Etruscans either. Afterwards, it was exploited and colonized by the Romans too. Then came the Medici. Then in 1814, Napoleon came in exile. He stayed less than a year, but he certainly left his mark behind. He had a couple of villas built. The Villa del Munini.
The story of the Argonauts is a story of great navigators who sailed the whole of the Mediterranean to and fro, searching for the Golden Fleece, but who also looked for adventures with the ship the Argo, an incredible, wonderful ship which brought them everywhere, just like us on the Adriatica. But how did the story of the Argonauts begin? Jason, be careful! This concerns you too, because he is an evil king.
His name is Pelias. He was Jason's uncle, and he usurped and murdered him. And then he foresaw that he was going to be killed by a young man.
With only one sandal. This Jason, this character, or this young man, arrived with only one sandal and dressed in an animal skin. And it was he who was going to kill him. So Pelias, at this point, is somewhat concerned. At this point, he says, look, you deserve the kingdom, see? Yes, because your father, etc., etc. No, really you do. But on the other hand, if you recover the Golden Fleece, you will definitely have the kingdom. I'll give it to you. So Jason summoned the greatest warriors of the time and got ready to leave for the greatest seafaring mission of ancient times. What do you say, Mataro? What shall we do?
Well, I'm going to take off my tourist by chance glasses and become an Argonaut by chance instead.
The Adriatica, just like the Argo and Mataro and like Orpheus.
I'm going to put on this mythical coronet, which is very Greek, don't you think? And let's begin by bringing you the latest news. As soon as the ship was put to sea, the Argonauts sacrificed 2 cows to Apollo in order to wish fortune upon their voyage.
But what happened? While they were sacrificing the cows, they drank and ate. In fact, they got drunk, and before very long, they began to fight amongst each other. Castor and Pollux began to fight each other. Well, they were real fighters. They were incredible people.
And they would have compromised the voyage if Orpheus hadn't intervened and placated their minds. The minds of the comrades with the sweet sound of his music. La, la, la.
But Jason and Orpheus weren't the only ones on board the Argo. Teleargo is very interesting.
That's right, we have a particular case as well.
On the ship Argo.
We even had a transsexual.
We have a transsexual.
His name was Janaeus, who was once a woman. Well, how that happened, we don't know, do we? Who knows?
Yes, it's very strange. On the Argonauts' ship, the Argo, they had the lot.
They didn't miss anything.
And there was also a natural woman, Atalanta the sprinter.
She called Atalanta from Calydon, the virgin huntress. So probably her speed was also due to her running after animals.
Atalanta, the virgin huntress. All right, come on now. Lara will be Atalanta, the fastest woman on Earth. In any case, she certainly lost a race. And this is well known because there are also many portrayals of this in ancient paintings. Atalanta challenged Milanion, who then made some golden apples fall to the ground, so she stopped to pick them up and lost the race, but she earned the gold and the love of Milanion. So she stopped on purpose then. Oh, come on.
Let's say so. I mean, what more could she want?
Oh, she's not stupid. She stopped to collect the golden apples, not tomatoes, just golden apples.
The Island of Elba, the Viticcio Bay.
Ha! Where were we now with the story of the Argonauts? While everybody is having a swim, I'll tell Zoe the story of the encounter between Jason and Medea. It was Jason who went to the king, and the king said, "Before I tell you where the Golden Fleece is, you will have to undergo some trials." You must take 2 bulls, which blow fire and flames from their nostrils. You must tame them, put a spell on them, and plow much soil in a huge field. After you have done this, you have to sow the dragon's teeth, from which will grow countless giants. When you have done this and returned alive from this endeavor, I will tell you where you may find the Golden Fleece. The Golden Fleece hangs from a tree guarded by an evil dragon. Truly evil. So, at that point, Jason sat on a rock close to the ship and said to himself, "I'm going to lose everything. What shall I do?" Poor guy, he needed someone to help him, but who would help him? Well, it was the young Medea.
Un bambino tutto solo che non sa con chi giocare, è un canto, non è un pianto che si perde all'orizzonte, sul partire lentamente di una nenia dolcemente, in un bosco sto correndo, animale senza tempo, sento l'acqua che respira contro tronchi di cemento. Una donna che si bagna di carezze sconosciute, la sua pelle è al ricamo degli amori già vissuti, un uomo che si lagna degli amori ormai perduti, amore mi fa disperar, amore mi fa palpitar, amore che vien, amore che va, finché amor
Knowing what he did afterwards, which is all written in the tragedies. He was perfectly able to solve the problem all by himself. Exactly. But Medea could have said, "You're on your own, do what you can." But in the end, he is the one who betrays her. He marries someone else and so on. However, Medea in this case was unfortunately under a magic spell. The son of Venus, Amor, made her fall in love with this young man who was around at the time. She was vulnerable at this time and very sad, so she fell in love. You know how that happens sometimes. What love makes us do. Ah, the power of love. In the story of the Argonauts, Medea also performs a magic ritual, and a young woman herself becomes unrecognizable. She was a witch capable of incredible magic and rejuvenating the old King Pelias, who sent Jason on the quest for the Golden Fleece. He did so that he would not have to give him his kingdom. Surrounded by the great reputation of being a famous priestess, she then goes to Pelias and says, "Do you want to become young again? To be young and beautiful? Do you really want to be rejuvenated? Well, I have the secret of youth." Medea, in order to convince King Pelias of her great powers, took an old billy goat and cut it up into pieces, and from these pieces she created a young goat. At this point, well, Pelias believed it, and then he underwent the trials. What could ever happen to this Pelias? The landing of the Argonauts right here on the Elba Island, on the beach of the Gravels, where, according to legend, they left traces of their passage. The beach isn't really deserted. That's because it is the beach of Portoferraio itself. But there's a spot where we can stay. It's not working. Atalanta's a bit pale and Jason got too much of a tan.
Well, I could do them up with some shoe polish. Maybe not. Better to sprinkle them with some red soil from the tennis courts.
What a cool Jason. Fantastic. Then we're ready. Right in the middle of the tourists on the beach here, let's keep going with our historical reconstruction. Jason, among his numerous adventures which brought him across the Mediterranean, landed here on the beach of the Gravels on the island of Elba. The Argonauts moored their ship, the Argo, close to the coast. They explored the unknown and uninhabited land. But exhausted and disheartened by the search for the Golden Fleece, they slumped down on the beach. And on the white gravels, the drops of their sweat and fatigue fell. And still today, these pebbles are mocked by their passage. Behind every legend, every myth, and every fairy tale, there is some truth. These are the tears of the Argonauts. The fact that they came here and cried their tears and sweat on this beach represents the effort they made to extract the minerals from the earth. It is the same thing they say in Peru about its gold. The gold is the tears of the gods. Blood, sweat, tears are always something associated to the extraction of metals. After the myth of the Argonauts, we move on to a historical reality. Here, on this beach of the Argonauts, these black marks on the stones are signs that here iron had been extracted. And here we have an Etruscan.
Here in my hand is the emblem of the Etruscan metalwork.
Can you put it on me?
Of course, here.
We are two Etruscans. Yes, basically you, Gino Brambilla, pleased to meet you, also known as
the Art Petrus.
The Art Petrus, in his job as an Etruscan metalsmith, well, you basically practice experimental archaeology.
That's right, yes.
In the sense that you ask yourself the question, how could the Etruscans build furnaces, melt iron, and so on?
And we were able to find the answer. They had to reach 1,300 degrees Celsius.
In the smelting furnaces strewn over the whole island of Elba, exploiting the plentiful woods of its forests, the Etruscans melted the iron extracted from the mines.
This here is the nozzle, which conveys the air from below. And it lies in this position here, and then it sends air inside the furnace when the furnace operates. This is the opening here for the loading, and here for the burning coals, which are thrown in, along with the minerals until it reaches, well, after about 10 to 12 operating hours. Then you get this bloom, this iron sponge, as the ancients used to call it, which is then transformed into soft iron or steel.
The Etruscans not only extracted iron and traded in it, they were the ones who even invented steel.
Absolutely, they transformed iron into steel, and then thanks to the Etruscans, the Romans developed it over the entire Mediterranean basin.
And the use of iron has been the incentive of every technological development in history that we know of. However, it was the mythical Argonauts, the peoples of the sea, who discovered it right here on this island, the unique island of Elba.
Now we stand by to hoist the mainsail because there will be quite a rough sea ahead of us. This way the boat will be more stable. The Adriatico, with a crew of sailors by chance and Argonauts for fun, is heading towards the northwest. We'll sail on towards Piombino, the Gulf of Barati in Popolonia. On board the Adriatico, we're sailing on, out of the island of Elba and heading south towards the Pontino Islands, along the Tyrrhenian coast, by sea and by land, with some inland excursions on the trails of the ancient navigators who first colonized the Mediterranean. It's dawn when we leave the island of Elba and head towards Piombino. It's about 14 miles away. We have a 20-knot headwind.
Good morning. There they are. Medea and Atalanta have gotten up. But when we were acting out the Argonauts, they were a lot perkier.
Sure, right, but what was this Argonaut story about?
Jason, who was the expedition chief, showed up with only one sandal in front of Peleus, the king, his father's brother who had usurped the throne. The king had been alerted by an astrologer that a young man with only one sandal would be his ruin. So, in order to kill him, he sent him on the most difficult endeavor he could ever imagine: the conquest of the Golden Fleece. Jason thought about it and then decided to leave with his companions on this adventure. Among them were Atalanta, the world's fastest woman, and Castor and Pollux. Together with some other soldiers, they went on a journey far and wide across the Mediterranean Sea. And so began their journey to the countries with their boat, the Argo, which also had a talking figurehead. But after many efforts and adventures, the Argonauts would have given up their endeavor, were it not for the great Orpheus, a great singer who in moments of great stress gladdened them with his very sweet songs. Jason, however, arrived with his Argonauts to their destination, the Colchis, but he realized that in order to attain his objective, he should defeat the dragon, which was guarding the Golden Fleece.
Well, in the meantime, we're almost at our destination. Now we're about to enter the port of Piombino with due precautions because it's a port that's crowded with ferry boats which are mostly heading to the Elba Island. We go to Piombino to disembark. It's an exclusively commercial port, but the Adriatica with her draft doesn't have any other option.
But historically, for us, we're on the route of the peoples of the sea and of the Etruscans. Piombino is an unmissable stop. Piombino! The Adriatica has arrived in Piombino, the starting point of everything. Here, iron was brought and processed, and from here it was brought across the Apennines to Marzabotto, and then to Spina on the Adriatic Sea. So Piombino has remained a crucial place.
The ferry's arriving.
Let's get out of here. But what about him?
The Adriatica is casting off and sailing out. And we, along with Carla, are going to land and visit the Etruscan site of Populonia with its port Baratti.
Populonia is the only Etruscan town by the sea. But the Etruscans brought everything to Baratti, so as a matter of fact, the archaeological site is Baratti, which is close by. What is it, about 8 kilometers away?
Yes.
It's a natural port. The Etruscans were very capable sailors, and the keels of their boats were 30 meters long. I read it in the book of the doctor Giulia Petana, The Etruscans and the Sea, and Giulia is here in Baratti waiting for me. She's a researcher and an archaeologist and has written a book on Etruscan navigation. We always talk about the Etruscans as a land people, a people that lived on land, crops, etc. But this isn't true. If they were a mercantile population, then they had to transport metals. They had to do it via
the sea, also because in ancient times it was easier to move by sea through the waterways. Theophrastus was a Greek writer from the 4th century BC who tells us that there was beechwood as high as 30 meters, which the Tyrrhenians, as the Greeks called the Etruscans, used for the keel of their ships. Therefore, if the keel was 30 meters long, the ship was definitely much longer. As a matter of fact, we know that probably their cargo vessels had 2 masts and a length of 35 to 40 meters.
And where they even brought animals, so probably the famous Chianina cow.
Some research has been made on the mitochondrial DNA, and it shows how close the DNA of the Tuscan ox, now in particular the Maremma ones, is to that of the Anatolians.
As a matter of fact, we went to sea to look for the last Chianina cows, which are to be found here in Tuscany. Beautiful, 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 with a lovely large nose. Oh, it's huge! Who are you? Where do you come from? Where do cows come from? What is this kind of animal? The Angora sheep, too.
But where are you? What are you talking about? Let's talk about the sea, not farming.
Also the Angora goat.
Look, it's eating away at your dress.
Even the Angora goat, where does it come from?
You're crazy. What are you talking about?
Where do they come from? Where does the cow come from? It's a mystery. The mystery has been revealed with the DNA tests. These cows came to Tuscany from the Middle East in the late Bronze Age. This is from eastern Turkey. How? Well, not by land, because there isn't any sign of their passage. They came by sea on their boats.
Oh, I got it. This means that the Etruscan, too, came from Anatolian. But now they came back to us.
We're about to enter the archaeological museum of Populonia. From here you can see the sea, the Barati Gulf. It isn't a gulf, it's a massive lake. It's a marvelous place. The Etruscans weren't stupid at all, and they chose a well-sheltered place in order to conduct their maritime business. And we are here to evaluate the Etruscan sailing ability.
So, shall we go and see an Etruscan ship?
Of course, we can't find the ships, but we can rebuild them through the pictures we find on Etruscan pots and frescoes. In some specific situations, the Fisher's Tomb in Tarquinia, the Ceritano dish with the scene of the whales' fight, the Tarquinia vase, where several cargo ships are depicted. So here in Populonia, they speculated how an Etruscan ship would have looked like. Basically, they had a long keel of about 33 meters, with the beaked bow and the Horus eye, the apotropaic eye.
Apotropaic, yes.
That is a good idea for today's ships, a stern made with a bridge.
With the bridge for the helmsman.
You're getting excited now, but here these guys are upset. Why? Because there was a pharmacological problem.
It's true.
Because of the rough sea, they took some seasickness pills. And these pills, well, they had this kind of effect on them. Well, how does it feel?
Of drowsiness, yes.
So, now we've got the best conditions to imagine we're really in the Etruscan age. In this drowsiness, everything's possible, even the strangest things.
I really think so. Yes, you're right. I feel drowsy.
That seasickness pill was strong. But from a pharmacological drowsiness comes a mirage, an old Etruscan lady who tells us how the Acropolis would have appeared to the mariners who landed here first.
This is the Sacred Road, so called because it doesn't show the wear and tear of the carriages, which would have travelled down here. Therefore, it was only used for pilgrimages, and it started right from here where the temples are, and it always led to another important religious building.
But what were these exactly?
These are calcarenite blocks which in ancient times covered these temples, and they came from the nearby quarries. Obviously, these were looted in medieval times to make rock crystal.
It's always the same, even on the old Etruria. To think that these temples had statues, metopes, decorations, and ceramic bas-reliefs, and they were painted totally with bright colors.
It would have been interesting to imagine and even see from the sea how these colored temples actually look like. Do you think they came from some great civilization?
What are you talking about?
Did I get it wrong?
Didn't they come from a great civilization?
No, I meant to say those who came by boat.
But they came from Egypt and from Asia. And maybe they came from far away, and here they found the remains of common ancestors. You had the Hercules Temple, the most Nordic god of the time. Fancy that, eh? The Pillars of Hercules. Where could they be?
Not in Gibraltar.
Not in Gibraltar. There are strange pillars of Hercules, probably because of their big dimensions. Where? In the North Sea.
But what's the North got to do with it? Didn't you say that the Etruscans came from the East, where present-day Turkey is?
According to other accredited theories, they also could have come down here via the Tyrrhenian Sea from the north. Then later, they could have moved eastwards before coming back here. Because legend has it that the king of the Tyrseni, in the wake of a famine, divided the population and entrusted part of it to his son Tirzeno. The population had to move and then take their chances in another place.
From the Tyrsenian Sea?
Yes, like the Adriatic Sea. Where does the name come from? From King Adrio?
Who was Adrio?
A king?
No. In fact, spare me the details. Don't tell me. Just leave it. Guido and I were just here having a little off-the-cuff remark. That's it. Just a small comment. And then we said, wow, look how lovely it is. Look. And it's been such a long journey and to see a beautiful colored temple. And she just went off on one. Oh, I've got a headache.
I found what I was looking for, the megalithic walls, the unmistakable evidence of the peoples of the sea. Here in Populonia, we find structures of megalithic walls and an arch like this one, which is definitely similar to the Mycenaean ones. Once again, we recall the Sardinian gates of the Nuraghe. From Sardinia to Greece and Troy, I've documented mysterious megalithic and polygonal walls just like these ones. Evidence of a seafaring people who built their strongholds along the Mediterranean coasts. These walls have been found not so long ago by digging just 6 meters, but there should be some more of them. Even Marta Coccoluto, the archaeologist of the museum, confirms this. Therefore, you've discovered these walls a short time ago.
Yes, we've seen that the entire town, the Acropolis of Populonia, was built on terraces with these mighty walls, which were very large and well-squared boulders, or built in semi-polygonal shape. They covered the entire hill right until the top in order to build these artificial terraces, you see.
Therefore, they represent the evidence of a population that was more ancient than the Etruscans. There's a Pelagian smell here. This is crazy because we've already met them all the way along the Mediterranean coasts, in every place where navigation could have been of some interest.
Because the sea has always had a connection with other peoples, the territory that you can't travel by foot or by carriage, you travel on by boat.
And in particular, the Etruscans here had a very efficient communication network between the mainland and the archipelago.
On the entire headland of ancient Populonia, there is a communication system based on watchtowers for communication with the Elba Island and for the arrival of the ships.
This was their sea, and this was essential, even at that time.
The territory of Populonia wasn't only the hinterland, but it was also the sea and the islands. Therefore, the Populonia territory composed of the Tuscan archipelago, and in particular the island Elba and Capraia. From Elba, you could easily reach Corsica, so this is the reason why these watchtowers are so numerous, because sailing was always visual. These towers could also have a business-like function. We don't know how they sailed, but mostly they relied on experience and not on the stars, but on the position of the sun and probably the acrostoli, as you've already seen in the reconstruction. The foremost part of the bow that rised above the bridge was probably cut in a way that could cast a shadow on the forebridge to show, in some way, the direction. It also seems that Jason on his Argo used this method, and let's say that Jason considered this the talking part of the ship.
This is the reason why Argo's figurehead spoke. It showed Jason the way. How do you face an ascent?
Calmly, right? It's true.
The Acropolis Road, Etruscan huts. I know that I'm dragging you up a mountain after you've got up at 6 in the morning. You've managed to weather the seasickness. I know.
We managed it slowly.
Well, but we've got to get to the top of the Acropolis of Populonia. Now, the megalithic walls go as far as here. So you could imagine that this entire wall once surrounded the whole mountain. And then, from the landscape, we can see that from here you could overlook it. Oh, there it is. There's an endless reservoir of minerals. There it is, Elba Island. Is this correct?
Yes, and here we can make a connection with the Pelagians.
Sure, right, let's do it.
As you were talking about megalithic walls of seafarers, and of course you've already mentioned that this was a story of metallurgy and the Pelagians were the ones who held the secret of tin.
So what can we say about the Pelagians? We've been talking about them in several places.
Two eminent ancient authors, Lanico and Antiquide of Athens, connect the origins of the Etruscans to the Pelagians, and Lanico says that the Etruscans were simply Pelagians. He says it clearly, but Antiquide tells us that a group of Pelagians accompanied Tirreno, the mythic founder of Etruria, from the Asian Minor Territories.
It looks like everyone calls themselves a Pelagian, as there are Pelagians everywhere. They are at the root of every ancient institution, and where we find the walls, we find the entire navigational concept.
Let's say that it wasn't to do with a single ethnic group, but all of the Mediterranean populations are a cultural substrate, based on the richness of the metals, so on their processing and export of metals too. And of course, on their research. It took sailing skills and the ability to build megalithic walls in order to defend themselves in the very place that were rich in these resources, like Populonia.
Where do the famous Pelagians come from? This is the question. Is there an answer?
This is one of the most incredible mysteries of the ancient Mediterranean.
They could have come from northern Europe to Anatolia, and from there to Italy. There are also some who believe the contrary, that they came to Italy first, then they went to the Aegean, and then back here. I think that Aeneas knew where he was going.
There is also speculation that the foundation of Troy came from here, meaning that Aeneas went back to his origins.
Well, now this is a theory.
It's a theory.
These Pelagians.
Did you hear, Zoe? Very interesting. The Pelagians, they had these large white sails. But they could also have been the Pelagri. The Pelagri tribe, who are large people like me.
Yes, you laugh, but Pelagian history is also in their name. Pelago meaning to embroil. In fact, for their settlements and ports, they favored marshlands rich in fish and game.
While you're entangled in your mysteries, I'm going to have some fun with Francesco and Alida, the guides of the experimental archaeological park. This is a perfect Etruscan welcome. And in this Etruscan hut, they rebuilt it with wooden walls and mortar. Then there's the reconstruction of the Etruscan Scriptures.
They carved here on the wax. For example, I'm writing my name in Etruscan.
Why are you writing from right to left?
Because the Etruscans wrote from right to left.
Visitors can also process the wool like the Etruscans used to.
To spin wool into thread in ancient times, they used the dried flower of the wild cardoon.
Experimental archaeology is about to reproduce today with the same techniques used by the Etruscans.
Sure.
The target is to have as much fun as you can, right?
Sure, lots of it.
And then
to teach the children to protect their roots, and above all to reconstruct history where it wasn't handed down or written to us. But only through experimentation can we go back to what actually happened, since we don't have it written down.
And now we can go on with our visit even more motivated and enthusiastic here in the Necropolis of St. Sardone, where there are the marvelous tombs of the 7th century BC. They are circular constructions with a singular entrance leading to the internal chamber.
Oh, come on. It's beautiful.
The cover here has been faithfully rebuilt and represents the original one.
The Pantalaria Tomb. True, it's the tomb of Atreus in Mycenae. Yes. And then the Nuraghe. Do you like this kind of shamanic idea of burial? This is a spiraling ceiling, isn't it? This is the strength of the square basement, and then the ceiling is circular like the sky. I like this very much. But this tomb is also a sundial. My question is this. What happened here during the solstices, equinoxes? Is there any connection to the light entering this place?
The light entering the chamber is essential. It indicates the rebirth, the passage beyond the grave.
In fact, the rebirth happens at the solstice, when the sunlight enters the door across the walkway and illuminates the wall at the end of it. This happens in many monuments in ancient times. But there's a place that looks like this one, but it's larger. And the other place is?
New Grange.
Right, the New Grange. And how long ago was that?
3000 BC.
And we're talking about where?
About Ireland. So?
Well, let me get this. Let me understand. I didn't know about the New Grange. I didn't know what this was all about. What's the Irish connection?
It's all to do with a tumulus in Ireland, quite close to Dublin, dating back to the year 3000 BC. It's a sundial, as Syusy told us, and it orientated in a way that in certain days of the year, like the solstice, the light went through a long walkway to hit a stone embellished with spirals, therefore a solar symbol.
If there is something greater, more accurate and more important, more noteworthy, it would be even older, much more, and it will be more unique than anything else.
Syusy is inclined to the north.
I'm inclined for a Nordic origin for these famous Pelagians and these famous Etruscans. Yes, Nordic, far away in the north.
Wow, I feel like Captain Fitzroy along with Darwin. They charted all the coasts, so let's start with the lighthouse at Punta Libidania, over there.
Punta del Monaco.
Then there's Punta Cacciarella.
Punta Grande, and then there is Calabria, which is inland.
What's the name of that cliff, Carlotta?
Argentarola.
I'm steering there. Now we know its name, it'll be easier to dodge, and Stefano's definitely dodging it. Hey Pat, can you see? That's Porto Ercole. And over there is Cala Galera. We're about to arrive in Porto Ercole. We're basically sailing around the entire Argentario headland.
There's some wind outside. Here, however, we're sheltered by the rock.
Let's go on land to Porto Ercole.
Do you know why its name is Porto Ercole, as in Hercules?
No, I don't know why. Don't tell me it's got something to do with...
Yes, the peoples of the sea. Porto Ercole owes its name to the fact that the Etruscans had a fortress which reflected the constellation of Hercules. Hercules was the ultimate hero. You can also add some Argonauts that are represented here. The fortresses, then, were built after the Etruscan age, and they stood as a defense of this stretch of sea, which is the furthermost tip of the Argentario. And here, near Porto Ercole, the lifeless body of Caravaggio was found, who had died of malaria.
Here we are. Talking about Caravaggio, I was told that here, in Porto Ercole, there are some traces of his passing. I want to show them to Zoe. Zoe, do you know what a tourist does when they arrive somewhere?
No, what do they do?
They buy a guidebook in order to find out what should be seen. And do you know what I found out about Porto Ercole?
Tell me.
Well, I know that Porto Ercole is a very ancient village dating back to the Copper Age, 6,000 years BC.
The civilization of this area has ancient origins, and this has been proven by the large port of Orbetello, which I can reach by car. I have an appointment with Giuseppe De Drosa, a pupil of the Academy of Mario Pincherli and Emilio Cagnoli, an enthusiast of the Megalithic Walls of Orbetello. They disclosed to me some very important facts. Orbetello is situated at the center of these two parts of land. What no one notices is that the tombolos, the landforms of the Gianella and the Feniglia, encircle Orbetello inside an impregnable space, so to say.
Well, strategically, it could have been a very defensive port. There are even stories quoted in a book by Mario Pincherli, The Invisible Port of Orbetello, which discusses these canals and how they could have been covered up in ancient times by bushes. Therefore, the ships could enter the canal, even if they were being chased by other ships. they could still manage to get inside right away, and those who didn't know Orbetello couldn't understand that there was a port built behind it. It's incredible what they did here.
But now there are only small powerboats that pass by. Before the permanent bridges were built, even sailboats could enter.
In other times, we could have entered Orbetello with a boat like the Adriatica. I know that there was a drawbridge going up and down depending on the height of the boat. Then they removed it 40 years ago and they built this structure here, as we can see right now. Unfortunately, Orbetello, from a town on the water as it once was, has become, as I say, a town on the street. Meaning that we're cut off from the sea now.
And you were a port instead.
Yes, we've lost our identity. We've lived thousands of years like this, and we're sea people.
But how did the lagoon encircling Orbetello come about? And how did the tombolos come about? And the land and sand stripes which connect the Argentario to the mainland? Did anyone ever think how strange the morphology of the lagoon actually is? It's a mystery that you can see better from the top of the Argentario.
It's a freak of nature, really.
It's amazing. The tombolos are land stripes which enclose the lagoon. Orbetello is at the center. What a marvelous sight.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And there is mainland Italy. We're on the Argentario.
Clearly, there wasn't that road now connecting the Argentario with Orbetello, so there was only one lagoon. It wasn't divided, and there was also a better water flow. These tombolos here are very unique, as they are perpendicular to the land line and have an opposite shape.
Pinkerley, who is a writer and an engineer, developed some interesting theories. The more recent ones concerning these areas. He talks about Orbetello and the possibility that these two tombolos of land are man-made. But how?
The hypothesis stems from the presence of the tagliata. It's a hydraulic system built for the purpose of creating a countercurrent from south to north, in opposition to the marine current, which in some periods of the year flows from north to south. The river Albania and the river Fiora, like every other river, carries sandy sediments to particular points. And it's not by chance that the two tombolos are close to the two delta rivers. So, what Pinkerley suggests is that the two tombolos were built together by nature, by exploiting the movement of the currents between the Argentario mountain and the mainland.
So, all in all, it's possible that an engineer, an incredible one for the time, created this lagoon in order to enclose Orbetello between the two tombolos of earth. It was artificially made from the sediments that came from the river and also from the sediments coming from the man-made tagliata, which was made on purpose to allow the building of this land stripe. This is something incredible and comparable with the famous megalithic walls, which are a really big question mark in this entire territory. And not only here. If this is such an ancient story that dates back even before the Etruscans, what was this place all about? And then there's Saturn. What about this story? What about the kingdom of Saturn? Where is he buried?
Well, I don't know where he's buried, but it's here. I can't remember exactly where, but he did die here. Just be happy to know that he died here, okay? And don't give me that look of irony and delusion. I can't know everything, can I? If a simple father is just a tourist who buys guidebooks like everyone else. She wants to know exactly where Caravaggio's buried. Now I know that there's a monument to him somewhere, so I'd have to show her that.
But what is worth seeing is this, where I am, the walls of Orbetello. I'm on the polygonal walls which surrounded Orbetello. These walls cannot be dated, and their depth can't even be studied. Now, what we see is just a small portion of the entire monument, which had been underneath. Walls of at least 7 meters surrounded Orbetello. This peninsula, which stretches inside the lagoon and is surrounded by the sea, had a large port protected by the Tyrrhenian Sea. It was also protected by the Argentario, protected by the two land stripes, which made it an absolutely impregnable space. The walls of Orbetello are the only example of polygonal walls on water. But what really was Orbetello? Is it really such a particular place built by someone who knew and loved the sea? There's a Pelagian smell here. There's a smell of the peoples of the sea.
What we can say with certainty is that towards the end of the 1980s, they drilled around the perimeter of the Orbetello walls and they managed to drill 5 meters underneath the level of the lagoon. This means that there are at least 7 meters that were ascertained. Every single stone has been worked on. Every edge was made ad hoc and it fits perfectly with the other. And if we study them accurately, we can observe even some arches. In fact, they are even inside these walls, so they are arches that would perfectly stand up, even if a monolith was missing.
There are also anti-seismic walls.
This is really one of the most ancient polygonal works in Italy. This is the door, you see. As a matter of fact, there was a little harbour here which reached inside. Can you see there?
How nice. Just think, they're really Cyclopean.
There
Fascinating.
are lots of arches. There's the arch Giuseppe was talking about. Can you see? And there is a rock with some various mineral traces brought from the mines.
So they surround the entire town then. It's incredible to arrive in Orbetello on a land route with all this concrete, with all this asphalt. You can see the beauty a place like this must have been. It was definitely planned only for the sea. So, there were canals, boats, and other things like that. It must have been beautiful. My God, what a barbaric age we live in now.
Zoe, maybe this is the monument to Caravaggio.
Dad, someone wrote, "To Jesus Christ Redeemer, Porto Ercole 1901. What more do you need to know?
All right, maybe it's further ahead.
No, Dad, no.
Hey, this one, Zoe, it could be this. Look, Zoe, at last, this is the monument, symbol of Caravaggio's life. The dagger, the jewels, the prison, the symbol of the Maltese cross, because he was one of the Maltese knights, you know. Then he was expelled by the order, and when he died, the Maltese knights wanted to have all his paintings, but his heirs told them, "No way, forget about it. You kicked him out, so we're going to keep them." Do you like it, Zoe? Are you happy that we found it?
No comment.
It was worth it, wasn't it?
I'm in Orbetello along with Giuseppe and Emilio, and we're about to go and see the Tagliata d'Ansedonia. So let's go to the Tagliata. The mysterious hydraulic work is difficult to date. It's to do with the canalization of the river waters coming from Lake Burano and driven into the lagoon.
Well, here we're near the canal, which conveys the water towards Tagliata, the Tagliata of Ansedonia.
The Tagliata is situated on the rocky part of the Ansedonia Gulf. There's the canal, whose waters flow faster and faster when going towards the lagoon. The water here has an incredible speed. It really becomes a narrower and faster canal. Then the water bends. Oh, here's an opening in the rock, all chiseled off by man. From here, I can see that it bends as I see the water flowing into the rock.
Wow, come and check this out.
Go!
You're not coming?
No.
Why? Because of the bridge? Come on. This is Indiana Jones style. On a Sunday morning.
It would be funny if you fell into the water right now.
You make me laugh. I am Indiana Jones. Look. Look where my research has taken me. It's taken me to the nearby grotto called the Fracture of the Queen. This is the first tagliata, the temporary one, let's say, the one which maybe inspired the entire idea, because they saw from here how the water conveyed and brought accretions and sand. And then they said to themselves, well, now that this one has crumbled, let's build a more efficient artificial one. You can see from the crumbles that afterwards they built some very small tunnels in the tagliata, which still convey the water and bring it towards the Orbetello lagoon.
Come on, Zoe, let's go look. Ooh, look. Yeah, fantastic. Look, all dug by human beings. Here is the real tagliata, an engineering masterpiece. This precise cleavage in the rock was definitely man-made and was definitely a well-thought-out purpose. It was probably for a bulkhead that could be raised and lowered depending on how much water they wanted to get in the Orbetello lagoon and how much they wanted to drive away the water that amassed behind here.
You could definitely generate a countertide, that's for sure. Then you had to determine if that was strong enough or not.
To settle the sand which had been conveyed by the river.
The important thing here is to ask questions, to talk about it, to exhibit this work, and also to value it on a tourist level.
Yes, because it's quite derelict and undervalued. What are these canals and what was their purpose? We are here on the courses of the peoples of the sea to unlock this mystery. Something that has to be studied and explained.
So therefore, according to you, this hydraulic work was made with the purpose of creating the port of Orbetello, as we know it today.
Certainly, the famous peoples of the sea could have built an array of unassailable ports along all the Tyrrhenian coast. The following populations, like the Etruscans, could have reused them for their trade. Beside the ports they built on the mainland in important towns surrounded by megalithic walls, like the one of Cosa, that we're about to go and see. Cosa? Cosa is a less known but extremely interesting archaeological site. In front of these walls of Cosa, which are really incredible, where there's a strong scent of mint, which adds even more to it. Oh, come on, it's beautiful. I want to hear from you why you're so passionate about boulders.
Well, we're so passionate about these stones because these stones have certain features regarding their shape, which are the same in several areas around the world, and they shouldn't really have any kind of historical connection at all. Here you found some young students from the University of Padua. Here we find polygonal cuts, just like the ones we find in Peru and Cusco. We found them in Egypt, even near the temple close to the Sphinx. We've also found them in Mycenae, in Machu Picchu, in Lebanon. They're basically all over the world, and therefore we can only think that there is some kind of common ground underneath all these cultures. I believe that myths and legends have connected these people, who are sometimes called the Pelagians. They thought they may have even come from Atlantis. They've been given thousands of different names over the years. There are not, however, any historical documents about these people. The kind of polygonal walls are determined by the extremely thin and precise fringes in the walls, and by these joints that are still called polygonal joints, which are practically perfect. It's limestone which is difficult to work on, and in order to do such work, you had to have a particular skill in construction. When studying these walls, we tried to connect with the people who built them and their construction style. I think that it represents a different mindset. It's a balanced way of building. They're a kind of representation of the civilizations who had been living inside these towns and had to stay together and respect each other's differences in order to live in harmony. Why are we so passionate about stones? Well, because stones, in contrast to documents, never lie. Documents, however, well, they do.
Here is written proof. Here we have told the truth.
The Ministry of Cultural Heritage says that the walls are from 273 to 264 BC. Look, it's been written down here, clearly.
But did the ancient Romans build polygonal walls in Rome?
Well, I was in Rome. Oh, you eat really well there. I went there, but I didn't look for polygonal walls in Rome, so I don't really know.
The Romans built square walls, then arches. They didn't build these kinds of walls.
No, there aren't any in Rome, or even near Rome.
So there aren't any around there?
There are some in Lazio, Tuscany, but in Rome, there are no polygonal walls. The Roman Vitruvius considered these walls as something, well, certainly not natural. He saw this mysterious past inside them.
Vitruvius himself said that there weren't Roman at all. Come on, let's go to the Acropolis again, where there are the Etruscan temples. This is a temple on the Acropolis of Cosa dedicated to Mater Matuta, Mother Nature, the goddess. And this is the temple dedicated to Jupiter. It's huge. From there, you can look down to the Argentario and the entire coast. This is the Etruscan period with walls that are below and surround the pre-existent residential area. I am on the farthermost edge of the Jupiter Temple, here on the top of the Acropolis of Cosa. From here, I can see the entire lagoon. I see Orbetello at the center. It's marvelous.